Today we're going to tell you about 3 cases where people just vanished. But these aren't stories about a lack of evidence. These are stories defined by silence, by people who were there, who saw something, and who, even decades later, refused to say what happened.
Exactly, and that's what's so unnerving about these particular cases. We often have this incredible, almost frustrating level of detail. We know the car, we know the names of the last people they saw.
But the facts just seem to build a wall of silence that paralyzed every investigation.
It's chilling.
Let's start with a really unsettling story from 1971 in Portland, Maine. This is the disappearance of a 16-year-old girl named Kathy Marie Moulton. It was September 24th. And, she was just being a normal teenager. She was getting ready for a dance, running errands. She visited a friend at a music store on Forest Avenue. The plan was simple: walk the 1.5 miles home. She had her brown leather clutch purse, with her key, some toothpaste, and almost no money. But she never got home for dinner.
And this is where the story immediately takes a dark turn. It goes from a simple walk home to something else entirely.
She was seen in a stolen blue Cadillac with a man named Lester Everett. And the first question police had was, well, did she go with him willingly?
But any ambiguity about that disappears very, very quickly. The later sightings make it clear she was in distress.
And this is where it gets really frightening.
Yeah.
Weeks go by, and they're spotted far from Portland, up in the remote woods of Aroostook County. Kathy, Lester, and a second young man, Ronald Reed Purley. They stopped at a garage in Fort Fairfield. They needed new tires for that stolen car. And the mechanic who helped them, he told police a detail that has defined this case ever since.
It's the detail that sticks with you.
He said that Ronald Purley was controlling her, physically controlling her.
Yeah.
He walked her to the bathroom and back with his hand pressed firmly on the back of her neck.
The hand on the neck, that's not a friendly gesture. That is complete control, both physical and psychological. She wasn't on a joyride. She was being held.
And it gets even clearer when they end up at McBride's farm, working in the potato fields. Other workers there said she was terrified. She was constantly begging Lester to just take her home to Portland. She didn't trust him at all. She even told another teenage girl there she was worried sick. Her parents were looking for her. People said she cried a lot, that she was scared of the other men.
Just completely isolated and afraid.
And then it all came to an end. Lester apparently got tired of her complaining. So on the night of September 29th, while everyone else was at a bonfire, he drove away with her. He came back the next morning, alone. He claimed he just dropped her at another camp.
But that wasn't the truth. The truth is he drove her across the Canadian border to the Tuque Reserve, and he left her there with Ronald Purley.
Which created a massive jurisdictional mess for the investigators in Maine.
A nightmare. And Lester. He just took off for Florida, he never came back to Maine, and died of cancer years later.
So that left Ronald Purley as the prime suspect. And he had a record for, serious violent crimes, rape, home invasion, but he just refused to talk.
Completely.
Yeah.
And investigators were just stuck. They even offered him immunity from prosecution. They said, just tell us what happened. Tell us where her body is.
And he still wouldn't talk.
Right. And what's so frustrating is, while police thought maybe Lester had killed her, some of Ronald's own relatives came forward later with a different story. They claimed Lester did drop her off at their home on the reserve, and that one of their own relatives had harmed her.
So they basically pointed the finger at their own family.
Yes. But then they clammed up. They refused to cooperate any further. So the authorities believe, they're pretty sure she died on that reserve before Thanksgiving of 71. But without evidence, without cooperation, there were no warrants, no charges. It was all just hearsay.
And the ghost of that evidence, it appeared once.
Yeah.
In 1983. It's just devastating. A hunter stumbled on a human skeleton near Smyrna, Maine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And there was female clothing around it that some investigators thought could have belonged to Kathy. But in a twist that is just almost unbelievable, the hunter couldn't retrace his steps. He couldn't find the spot again. They searched and searched, but the remains were never relocated.
Vanished, just like she did.
And the worst part of it all? Kathy's mother is still alive today, still waiting for answers that people on that reserve are holding on to. Let's go back now, a few decades earlier to 1948. We're in Texas, where a young woman's new life just ended before it could even begin. This is the disappearance of Mary Virginia Carpenter.
This case is terrifying because it shows how a life can just pivot into nothing in, a minute, maybe 90 seconds, right at that moment when you're most vulnerable, just arriving in a new place.
Mary was 21. She had just traveled from Texarkana to Denton to start a summer term at Texas Women's University. She was going to be a lab tech. She gets there by train on June 1st, 1948. The last person known to see her was her taxi driver, a man named Edgar Ray Zachary. He dropped her off at her dorm, Brackenridge Hall, around 9:30 at night.
She had every intention of staying.
Totally. She paid him, and she even gave him the ticket for her trunk, told him to pick it up for her the next day. But this is the critical moment. As Mary gets out of the cab, she walks straight over to two young men who were standing by a yellow convertible. A Pontiac, they think. One was tall, the other one was chunky.
And the cab driver said she approached them like she knew them. She just started talking to them right away.
So he figured, okay, her friends are here to meet her. He drove off. She never checked into the dorm. Her trunk was never picked up. She was just gone.
The initial theories were, well, maybe she ran off with the lover. She was known to fall in love easily. She had just broken off an engagement.
But her family fought back against that idea hard. They were a really close family. And they said, no way. No matter who she was dating, she would never, ever have just disappeared without telling them, not when she was about to start this new chapter in her life.
So attention had to turn elsewhere.
It did. They checked her ex-fiancé, Kenny Branham. He passed a polygraph, and he was actually the one who first called her mother to say she was missing. So then the focus shifted to the last man to see her alive, the cab driver, Edgar Ray Zachary.
And his past wasn't exactly clean, was it?
Not at all. He had a record for petty crimes, a bad reputation for being abusive, and later, in 1957, he was charged with attempted rape, though the charges were eventually dropped.
But he had an alibi for that night.
He did. His wife backed him up, said he was home by 10 p.m. And this is crucial. Edgar passed 2 polygraph tests about Mary's disappearance.
And back then, a polygraph was seen as pretty definitive.
Exactly. So for 10 years, the case just sat there, frozen. The machine said he was innocent. But then in 1958, a decade later, his wife went to the police. She confessed she had lied.
A decade later. Wow.
She said Edgar hadn't come home until 2 or 3 in the morning that night. A huge 4 or 5 hour window, completely unaccounted for.
It proves he was a liar, even if the polygraph didn't catch it. It really shows how fragile that early technology was. Edgar died in 1984, never charged. But the family always believed it was him.
And you have to consider the context of where she came from. It adds this whole other layer of dread. Mary was from Texarkana.
The town of the Phantom Killer.
Exactly. Just 2 years earlier, in 46, a serial killer had murdered 5 people in these lovers' lanes. And here's the detail that you just can't shake. Mary knew 3 of the victims.
So she grew up with that fear, that knowledge of random, sudden violence.
Right. And while police never found a direct link, you can't help but think about that. Her arriving in a new town with that history fresh in her mind and then walking up to 2 strangers in a car at night, it's just terrifying.
Decades later, in 1998, there was a tip. It suggested 2 men had attacked and killed Mary, then buried her body near a dam on the campus. But an investigation turned up nothing.
So all we're left with is that image. Mary Carpenter walking into the glow of headlights toward 2 strangers and then just disappearing into the Texas night. For our last story, we're going north to Spokane, Washington, in the spring of 1951. This is the vanishing of Alvin Matlock.
And this case is a masterclass in how a single convenient lie can completely derail an investigation for generations. It makes a disappearance seem like a choice.
Alvin was 21, an Army vet. He lived a very quiet, solitary life in a cabin on Browns Mountain. His family started to worry when he didn't show up for Thanksgiving in 1951. His mom drove out to the cabin and it was empty. Both of his cards were gone. No note, nothing.
Just gone.
And the easy answer came from a neighbor. The neighbor told the family, oh, Alvin just packed up and moved to Alaska.
Which, for a guy like him, sounded plausible.
It did. He was a loner, a big outdoorsman. So the Alaska story made sense, especially to his younger brother, Clyde. And Clyde, who is 83 now, is still looking for him.
But that story didn't hold up forever.
Not at all. Years passed, then decades. No letters, no phone calls, no records of him ever being in Alaska. The lie started to fall apart. And that's when a much darker rumor surfaced.
The affair.
The affair. The story was that Alvin was secretly seeing a married woman nearby, and her husband found out. Things got violent. Some people even alleged that neighbors heard cries for help coming from the cabin. The belief was that a fight broke out, he was injured, and the couple, they just let him die to cover it all up.
But with no body, it's impossible to prove.
It was an impenetrable wall for the police. They investigated the claims, but without remains, they couldn't even prove a crime occurred, let alone make an arrest. And suspicion, of course, fell right back on that neighbor who started the whole Alaska story.
The idea being he either helped cover it up or just planted the lie to give the couple time to get rid of any evidence.
And all the hope that remains is with his family. His brother Clyde and his wife Patricia never, ever gave up. They did their own detective work for years. In 2016, Clyde went to a missing person event and gave his DNA, just clinging to the hope that if Alvin's remains are ever found, they can finally be identified.
That's, 65 years of waiting? Because of one lie told in 1951.
These three stories, they each show a different kind of concealment. For Kathy Moulton, it was the silence of a community protecting its own. For Mary Carpenter, it was a suspect hiding behind the failure of early technology.
And for Alvin Matlock, it was the devastating power of a simple, calculated lie. A story designed to hide a violent truth. These cases really show that the deepest pain comes not from a lack of clues, but from the deliberate, purposeful silence of the people who hold the answers.
Thank you for joining us as we explored these painful truths. If these stories resonated with you and you want to continue exploring these kinds of chilling cases, please show your support. You can do that by liking, sharing, and subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs. We'll see you for the next investigation.